Thank you for coming. My talk is entitled, "The Revolution Will Not Be Televised, The Future of Science Education in Conservative States." I'm Jen Pierce at Boise State University. This is my climate story. I grew up in the Western US, in Colorado and Wyoming. I've always loved being outdoors, backcountry skiing, hiking, and spending time with my family and animals in the Tetons and Colorado mountains. Now I live in Idaho, and our beautiful landscapes bring me joy and solace. I've also grown up with wildfires. Fires almost burnt down our cabin outside of Yellowstone in the fires of '88, and again in 2016. My family values are science. My dad is a geoscientist, a geologist, and my grandfather was a geologist. I grew up talking about data and geology around the dinner table almost every night. Not surprisingly, I became a geologist, and my research has focused on wildfires and erosional responses from wildfires, and connections between fire, vegetation, and climate over short and long timescales. I always joke with people that I went to school for 12 years to tell you that fires are bigger and more severe when it's warm and dry. Recently, I've become engaged in soils and carbon storage in soils as a solution to climate change. My motivation, though, is my kids. Our kids need a functioning planet. And preparing my girls and the next generation of Idahoans to meet the challenges of a changing planet is no small task. There have been shifts in agricultural production, increases in the size and severity of wildfires, reduced water quality, and severe health impacts from wildfire smoke and summer heat. And these are only a few of the difficulties that Western US faces in an increasingly warmer future. However, our children are unprepared to tackle these challenges. So what can I do? Well, I can continue my research for a changing climate and a changing planet, but I've also gotten involved in climate education. I do outreach at primarily the 1st through 8th grade level. And over the past 4 years, I have volunteered for hundreds of kids in hundreds of classrooms. We can effectively and positively teach our kids how the climate change works and what they can do about it. Together with nationally recognized educators, I have team taught 4 successful teacher training workshops on climate science education to over 50 educators. Primarily, this is through a couple lessons, including greenhouse gas tag, where kids actually play tag to understand how the greenhouse effect works. And I'll show you a clip of that in a minute. After that, they can draw both their understanding of how the greenhouse effect works and their solutions. Lily here is showing us her understanding of how the greenhouse effect works, which is greater than most adults in our population. Teaching climate science and the effects of climate change provides elementary students with reasons to develop climate solutions. And here we have a couple of examples of what I would call technical climate solutions, where the child in the upper corner has developed carbon sequestration solutions, and what I would call non-technical solutions: protect our rainforests, plant more trees. However, teaching about climate change has become difficult in conservative states like Idaho. So when and why did teaching about climate science become so political?
The politically charged battle over climate change is increasingly spreading to the classroom. At issue, how and whether to teach it, including the scientific consensus about the role of human activity. It's a debate playing out in states adopting new science standards, including in Idaho, where a key vote could come this week. Special correspondent Lisa Stark of our partner Education Week reports from Boise. It's for our weekly segment, Making the Grade.
What's clay?
The Earth! These Boise second graders are playing an unusual game of tag.
On your marks, get set, go!
They're pretending to be sunlight. Once they reach Earth, they turn into heat. Some bounce back. Others are tagged and trapped by students masquerading as greenhouse gases.
Look at that. All right.
The idea is to help students understand global warming.
Earth is actually warming up.
So the more greenhouse gases we add to the atmosphere, what happens to the temperature of the Earth?
Look,
Yes,
it gets hotter.
it gets hotter.
What is climate change? What did you learn about that when you were outside playing tag?
It's when people put more carbon dioxide in the air and it makes it warmer.
Boise State University professor Jennifer Pierce offers this lesson on climate change to elementary school classes.
I think it's my obligation as a scientist and as an educator and as a parent to teach our kids about how the greenhouse effect works, how humans and fossil fuels have contributed to the warming of our planet, and what we can do about it.
Pierce crafted these lessons after becoming alarmed when Idaho's Republican-dominated legislature moved to soften proposed state science standards to play down the role of humans in climate change.
Well, the legislators seem to think that, you need to present both sides of the issue, that you need to be even-handed.
There aren't two sides of the issue. The global warming is happening and humans are the cause. There's not another side of the issue.
We'd like to call the House Education Committee to order.
The fight over new Idaho science standards for grades kindergarten through 12 has now dragged on for 3 years.
Kids that can think on their own, that come to their own conclusions.
Syme refused repeated requests for an interview, but told a newspaper, quote, "I don't care if students come up with a conclusion that the Earth is flat, as long as it's their conclusion, not something that's told to them."
Those clips from PBS NewsHour show how teaching climate science, at least in Idaho, is become increasingly political. Our frames are increasingly political, as shown by another great video, Why Some People Don't Believe in Climate Science. This is shown in the Yale 2020 maps as well, showing the estimated percent of registered voters who think global warming is happening and is mostly caused by human activities, breaks strongly along partisan lines, where most Democrats firmly believe that global warming is mostly caused by human activities, but most Republicans do not. So what is the answer? Clearly, we need to separate politics from science, not only for climate change, but for other grave existential threats that face our communities, such as the coronavirus. We need to separate politics from science. But how can we develop climate solutions in conservative states? I have a few ideas. First, if you want science to inform policy, you need to take the time to make that happen. A good friend of mine, Mike West, shown here, who's the state seismologist for Alaska, gave a great AGU talk a couple of years ago, saying how science and policy need to be in the same room together. You need to take the time to make that happen. For the Idaho state science standards that you just heard about in that clip, those standards were deleted, then proposed. The climate science standards were in the educational guidelines, but unfortunately in 2020 were again removed. Now this has gone back to committee to review the standards. I am on that committee, which is comprised of excellent educators, lawmakers, and bureaucrats. These meetings take days of time and wordsmithing, but that is where this happens. As Katharine Hayhoe says, we need to talk about it. We need to talk about climate change in conservative states, but maybe we need to use different words. Maybe we don't use the word climate change, but we all want to protect our communities from fire. We need to be talking about fire in Western states. Many people do not make the connection between climate change and wildfires. We need to talk about that. People need to know that these fires are caused by increasingly dry fuels and increasingly warmer temperatures. Most people do not think climate change will harm them personally. This again is from the Yale Climate Opinion Maps, showing that only 43% of Americans think global warming will harm them personally, and yet they think it will harm future generations. We need to better improve our understanding of the personal effects of climate change on our populations. Another lesson learned is that policy needs data. A friend of mine, Jen Marlin, has produced this amazing data, again, with the Yale Climate Change Communication Center. Here, specifically for Idaho, we can see that surprisingly, most Idahoans don't think that scientists think that global warming is happening. That means we scientists need to do a better job communicating that not only do we know that climate change is happening, but we also know that humans are the cause. These maps also reveal that there is broad policy support for teaching about global warming in the classroom. 76% of Idahoans approve of teaching climate change in the classroom, and even larger percentages would like to fund research into renewable energy and provide rebates for energy efficient vehicles or solar panels. We need to talk about jobs and clean energy. In Idaho, there is a winning solution that provides jobs for Idaho's growing economy, uses Idaho's naturally abundant resources, and reduces the inputs of carbon to the atmosphere, which cause climate warming. Idaho is blessed with abundant clean sources of energy, including wind, solar, geothermal, and hydro. In 2019, Idaho Power pledged to use 100% renewable energy by 2045, giving Idaho the opportunity to be the national leader in clean energy production. That will also produce thousands of jobs for Idahoans. So how can we develop climate solutions for conservative states? Talk about common ground. And here I'm talking about our actual ground. Finding areas where we can increase carbon storage in soils can be a win-win for climate, farmers, and families. As we transition to more sustainable agriculture, more of the next generation of Idaho farmers will want to stay on the land where their parents and grandparents have farmed. This is a key area of my research, where a key to slowing climate change may lie in Idaho's soils. We need to promote diverse voices and leaders in science, and especially in geoscience, where we have lagged behind the other sciences in promoting diversity and leadership. Remember that conservation is a conservative value. Conservation is something we can all come together on to conserve our forests, our rangelands, and our resources for the next generation of Idahoans. If you get depressed about climate change, take action. You will feel better, I promise you. I've taken action through education and through the formation of iClear, the Idaho Climate Literacy Education Engagement and Research Group. I would encourage you to contact me and find out more about iClear and how you might get involved. If you want to learn more, please contact me at jenpierce@boisestate.edu. And I'd like to introduce my daughters, who are the motivation for my work, Sabine and Annie. Thank you, girls.